Hello everyone and welcome to another Starcraft 2 livecast. For this one, once again, we're on the European server. And yeah, I need down for a couple hours for maintenance. My ping is very consistent with Europe. It's not as bad as the NA server when I get Brazil or Australia or Singapore, but it's not great either. With that said, it's definitely playable. So I do not mind playing on EU.
Not enough minerals.
It'd be interesting to see how far I could get on the Korean server, but that's one server where the lag is just... it's too far gone. Too much.
Not enough minerals. Not enough minerals. Not enough minerals. Additional supply depots required.
Alright. Alright, next one goes there.
Not enough minerals. Not enough minerals. Not enough minerals. Our SCVs are under attack. Our SCVs are under attack. Our SCVs are under attack. Not enough minerals. Command center upgrade complete. Command center upgrade complete. Base is under attack. Add-on complete. Additional supply depots required.
Okay.
Additional supply depots required. Not enough. Insufficient Vespine gas. Insufficient Vespine gas. Insufficient Vespine gas. Additional supplies.
Okay.
Add-on complete.
Oh, that's bad for him.
Research complete. Command center upgrade complete. Upgrade. Base is under attack. Mineral field depleted. Mineral field depleted.
Okay.
Command center upgrade complete. Our SCVs are under attack. field depleted. Add-on complete. Mineral field depleted. Mineral field depleted.
Oh man.
Additional supply complete. Your forces are under attack. Additional supply depots. Additional supply depots required. Your forces are under attack. Additional supply depots required. Research complete. Additional supply depots required. Add-on complete. Additional supply depots required. Research complete.
All right.
Your forces are under attack. Upgrade complete. Your forces are under attack. Insufficient rescue gas. Your forces are under attack. Insufficient vessel. Your forces are under attack. Command center upgrade complete. Command center upgrade. Mineral field depleted. Insufficient rescue gas. forces are under attack. Mineral field depleted.
Mothership.
Your forces are under attack. Mineral field depleted. Insufficient Vespene gas. Your forces Vespene gas are exhausted.
I can't build here.
Mineral field depleted.
Okay.
I can't build here. That's a negatory.
Your forces are under attack.
This special be quiet.
Oh.
Mineral field Vespene gas are exhausted. Your forces are under attack.
I can't build here.
All right. Got him. Huge economic lead, so didn't have too much to worry about there, especially with carriers. I can kind of counter carriers with money, just throwing down tons of missile turrets and a handful of Widow Mines. It's more the Immortals and the Tempests, I guess, are the issue. And Tempests are pretty slow at killing bases, so I can often win the base trading as that's going on. So probably a lot to review this game. He poked away at the front a little bit. I'm not sure if that's a Chrono Zealot or just a regular Zealot. Arrived before the bunker finished. So he sees that and he builds a second gateway. So he's going more aggressive. I guess this is where my economic lead began. But he didn't chrono the gateways at all. So, I don't know, maybe he's just doing a standard build and not adjusting it based on the fact that he saw I went CC first. And then what happens? Then he went for some sort of a prism tech on me, which had some minor success. He killed my tanks, but this portion definitely didn't go well. Yeah, he didn't kill any workers though, just the one. Using the prism with 3 stalkers, trying to ferry up to this high ground. He needed to move the stalker forward to give this position available to the prism again, but then even with high sec auto tracking, which I do not have, but if I had it, I think I'd be able to shut that down. I think this depot is important. So many times I get caught building this wall and moving out here, and then all of a sudden he does like a whole bunch of zealots running by, and I got this wall open. By adding this depot here, I kind of close off this wall as well as building this. I guess turret's up here. It's better than where I place this turret. So we have a worker lead, which is huge against Protoss, who should be ahead on workers, and we're expanding at or faster than he is, which is also very good. So I always say to make this build work, you need to be ahead of Protoss, and I think we got that. Because without this lead, it's really hard to transition to like this mid to late game composition of mine. I don't know why I landed that or burrowed that against a disruptor. Should have immediately unburrowed. I think you can right click the disruptor ball on top of a unit of mine and it'll follow the unit of mine. Of course, as I say that, I don't think that makes sense. I don't think you can follow an enemy unit. I think you can only follow a friendly unit. Establishing our forts around the same time, worker count's very similar. Oh, it's just about to go off. Same with a couple ninja bases. And build 7 Widow Mines at a time, which obviously he's going to get better and better at handling as he realizes he needs the detection. But until then, just do whatever we can with these. So, getting my new ravens to this position up here, while sending my initial 4 ravens to this position down here. The idea is to harass both bases until he's able to shoot me away with a Stargate unit. Oh, I didn't burrow them. So close. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And our bank is pretty big. Our Raven count has gotten up to, well, only 16 actually. This is the one matchup where I don't mind having infinite amounts of Ravens. There's no parasitic bomb to punish it. There's not supply I require for other things like Hellbat Harass. Just kind of the more Ravens I have, the better, I think, versus Protoss. I guess you're a little more vulnerable to things like Storm, but auto turrets are your harassment, and auto turrets are your defense, and auto turrets are eventually the kill button versus his death ball once I'm in the spot to actually perform it. Getting his 2 immortals down is really nice, because those are actually much more annoying than the Sky Toss death ball. Blink. It's got a lot of minerals right now, actually. Ooh, I think I got the Observer while I was shooting the Interceptor. Hey, moving disruptors. Always solid. Chase this as long as I can. He's about to find the dead space he needs, and we'll pull back. And I think, yeah, he's going to call that GG at this point. Killing off 140 workers. Not too shabby. Both those once I hit a new carrier or Tempest or something, because they don't have a kill. I can't wait for carriers to get buffed. It's kind of weird to hear a Terran player to say that, but carriers are an easier composition to face. And the buff they're likely going to get is their ability to build interceptors faster, which just means they get to lose more when they walk into my interceptor shredders, which is the missile turret, mass missile turret, mass planetary. Sorry, mass missile turret and a few Widow Mines with a repairing planetary to soak up the shots. So you can see interceptors start with 5 damage, which means the planetary is super important versus that, in that it has 5 armor, which means carriers without any upgrades will be doing 1/2 damage per interceptor shot. And then with plus 1, they do 1 damage per shot. And, no. Yeah. +2 though. Basically this number here is how much damage per shot the interceptor does. So if it gets up to +3, they'll be doing 3 damage per shot. Because the carrier damage is split up 16 ways, right? 8 interceptors that fire twice. So when you divide his damage by 16 ways, you end up with a very low damage per hit to keep it balanced. And damage per hit is really what matters, not DPS. Damage per hit is what armor excels against. So when EA moves in with the planetary in the front, it can just soak up so much damage, especially with repair in the background. And that's why often I get mad at myself when I'm facing carriers and realize I forgot my structure upgrades. Because without this +2 armor, I'm basically tripling the damage of the carrier. It depends on its upgrades, but this would go from 1 up to 3 if I forgot the structure upgrade. And high sec auto tracking is also really important because while all the interceptors are hanging out here shooting the planetary, you want as many of these missile turrets as possible to get in on the fight, killing all the interceptors. And without high sec auto tracking, maybe all 5 of these won't be in range where they would be with high sec auto tracking, or something along those lines. This is actually probably the most important base to keep alive versus the carriers, because this is the one that if he walks through it, you can get right on top of my production, and that's pretty scary. So maybe getting more Widow Mines here, maybe instead of 3, maybe more like 8. And obviously I can't put missile turrets behind the minerals because of all this terrain blocking stuff, but I can make up for that by putting maybe 4 missile turrets over here and maybe 4 missile turrets over here. So that way, like, yeah, if he attacks from this side, all those missile turrets will die first, but then these ones will be on the fight, in the fight to kill the interceptors, and vice versa if he attacks from the north. And if he attacks on this angle coming down the ramp, maybe all 8 of those missile turrets will be in on the fight without getting focused down. But yeah, don't want him on top of your production. So any base that's preventing him from getting at your production is an important base to keep alive, even if, you know, say it's out of minerals, for instance. I actually stopped at a reasonable amount of workers, 74, which was throwing me off because I kept looking at these new bases and it's their lack of workers, and I kept looking, okay, where's that base that has, you know, like 32 workers on minerals? Like there's got to be one here somewhere. I kept clicking around and looking for it, but everything was just like normally saturated, and 74 workers is not enough to saturate however many bases I had going here. Like probably like 6.5 worth of gas and minerals. But yeah, that is the style. Greedy opener, CC first, into fast third and fast fourth, while doing your best to stay alive, setting up a good defensive stance, which will help you further into the game. Like these missile turrets, yeah, they're a really expensive way to stop Warp Prism harass. Like you could just get a handful of Marines or something instead. But this is something that costs 0 supply, so it helps me in the late game, and it's something that'll be here all game long. So its value continues throughout the game, where a handful of bio units, for instance, to deal with drop will not be able to continue that role throughout the game. Yeah, and then just trying to pump all my money into Widow Mines. Widow Mines are good at defending these new bases. They're good at putting spotters out on the map to see what angle he's going to be attacking from. And wherever you can, they're good to block bases or harass mineral lines. So they serve many roles. And then you also try to get out one Raven early, which I wasn't able to do this game, but that's just to wander around looking for an observer. The next portion of the game is once your Ravens are out on the map, you want to just hide in the dead spaces and do non-stop worker harass at them. Not only will it kill off workers and annoy him and force him to micro, but also often keeps his army at home so that you can expand more easily and not have your bases threatened. And if he does attack, then you can punish him more with these Ravens, as they won't have a whole bunch of stalkers to defend. And that portion of the game is often quick, sometimes is non-existent at all, because it ends when the Protoss player starts making Stargate units. Then he can shoo away Ravens that are hiding in these positions. So some games, as soon as my Ravens arrive, they have to leave because there's already Stargate units out. Sometimes I have 2 Ravens sitting here for the entirety of the game, so it all depends. That brings us to the last portion of the game. Once he's able to shoo away the Ravens, we kind of join all our Ravens together, and they become our counterattack hit squad. So kind of looking for damage anywhere his army isn't. Protoss love to deathball. It's really, really bad against this strategy, but it's been great for Protoss for the last 10 years. So Protoss often keeps their entire army together. And when they need extra defense somewhere, they rely on recall or static defense or warping in gateway units. And that leaves them vulnerable. You know, if their army is over here, then I harass this space. If his army's over here, then I harass this space. Always trying to get Widow Mines in bases that don't have cannons. Always keeping Widow Mines in his bases he's likely to expand to. And if he ever moves out across the map to attack me, that's when my Ravens really do the work and just start hammering home the damage on him. Now, if he's moving out to kill me, he will be successful for the most part. I mean, in this case, he was a little bit weak. His army didn't max, and I was able to get... you're able to defend against carriers very easily with just mass stack defense, but that's not always the case. So in this portion of the game, you really want to make sure you're winning the base trade, and there's a few ways to ensure that. one is to use your Ravens. Obviously, it's maybe the only unit in the game that doesn't have to stay in a base to kill a base. I just need to pass through here, throwing down auto turrets, and I can immediately move on to the next base. That's why it's pretty cool in base trade situations. Really trying to focus the probe count is the most important thing. These auto turrets killing Nexi is just too expensive, so killing the probes is not expensive and hurts his economy almost as much. The other thing is to survive well on your ends of the map. So as he's killing bases, you want to be hurting him. So make sure you got your Widow Mines and your Planetaries being repaired during the attacks, and make sure you got your SCVs queued up to flee or hide in the back of the base after the Planetary dies. And just be mass expanding. Just expand, right? So if he comes and he takes out 3 bases, then yeah, you took out 3 of your expansions, but you got 2 more expansions, and you got some command centers coming up. Yeah, so if you have more bases than him, and if you're harassing his bases faster than he's killing yours, then you should always come on top in the base trade. And then the final step is once you've destroyed his economy, his army is going to be slowly getting depleted, and at some point you should be able to end the game with that. Now he's got minerals for days, so it's not like he's going to run out of interceptor money. But eventually he will, if we keep this trading going. You see he's already down. He just had a 4,000 mineral bank a second ago, and that is all gone now. The one advantage of carriers producing interceptors slow these days is when he does lose all his interceptors to one of my bases, it leaves him really vulnerable for quite a while, so I can attack him with all my Ravens. If I flew at 6 fully loaded carriers with my Ravens, I would be flying them into a suicide mission. I'd lose half my Ravens before I place my first auto turret. And even as I'm placing auto turrets, the auto turrets will prioritize shooting interceptors first, so it's very likely his entire army will stay alive. But without that interceptor count, I think with these 6 carriers, he may have only had like 15 interceptors at most. It's much easier to run on top of those interceptors. And as I was saying, the planetary armor being super important versus interceptors, because interceptors have very low damage per hit. For that same reason, ship plating on your Ravens is just as important. Right now, his interceptors are doing 3 damage per hit versus my Ravens. If I didn't have these upgrades, they'd be doing 6 damage per hit. So a good 50% decrease by having that +3. Yeah, that's about it. Anytime you clear the cannons out of base, it's a good time to walk in some Widow Mines. Widow Mines randomly out in the map are also nice as spotters. And the spotting is good because that's when you can see when he's crossing the map. And that's your cue to counterattack. Anyways, my babbling is done, but I think that was actually a pretty good coverage of how this build works. Like, he literally makes a composition that my composition can't fight, and yet you can make the strategy work. Like at any point of the game, I wanted to fight his army with my Ravens. It's going to be ugly. It doesn't matter if it's a Gateway Robotics army or whether it's a Skytoss army. It's going to look bad. Auto turrets are not something that works well versus Protoss, and even with anti-armor missile and matrixing important units, you're going to spend all your energy killing 1/3 of a Protoss army, and then you're going to die afterwards. But if you play it in this counterattack sort of style, which Ravens are pretty good at nowadays, now that they don't have Seeker Missile, it's kind of their last usefulness, at least for Mass Raven. You can make the style work. Yeah, so thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'm out of here. Goodbye.